Let's continue now with our eNCA focus on coalition governments. Yesterday, here on Today, we looked at whether coalition partners are in fact ignoring the needs of residents and focusing on self-interest. Today, we're going to be looking at whether parties can move from self-serving politics to something that will, in the end, benefit communities who, after all, are the electorate. These are the ordinary citizens who vote them into power under the current proportional representation system. I've got with me in studio governance expert Tessa Dooms. Good afternoon, Tessa. And I'm hoping to be joined in this discussion by the founder of the Institute of Election Management Services, Tessa Dooms. He used to work for the IEC way back. Tessa, welcome to our studios. I haven't seen you in an eNCA studio in a long time. I mean, thanks to COVID-19. But thank you for always being available to talk to us, even on Zoom. When you look at what's happening currently in Johannesburg, in Tshwane, for example, in Gqeberha in the Eastern Cape, Ekurhuleni here, do you think there is a way forward for multi-party coalition governments?
There certainly has to be a way forward. And it's got to do with a number of different factors. One of the factors is who we vote into those positions, who gets to get a seat in council. You know, one of the tragedies of the 2021 local government elections is there are fewer people, much fewer people that showed up or didn't show up than what should have, right? So we talk about 45% turnout. The real turnout for that election was actually 33%, because if you add in people who were not registered to vote at all, they wouldn't have been considered eligible voters. And so you have a minority of the population choosing our government. And I think that's part of our problem. The second part of our problem is that there's a big focus on the parties. And even at local government level, where, number one, we have ward elections. And in a ward election, it's a person against a person, even if that person is in a party. I mean, the ANC's got over 100 of its councillors in that chamber who are actually ward councillors. They're not PR councillors. And so as ward councillors, they were in a one-on-one race with each other on that ballot, first past the post, to represent a particular community. And so that takes us to the second part of what could make it work, is if you take your responsibility as a councillor to your community more seriously. Ward councillors need to enter into a social contract with the communities that they are representing, rather than a political contract with their party bosses. And that starts to change the dynamics quite significantly.
So the model has to change.
Well, it's not just the model. In this case, the model is not that bad. What's actually problematic is the political culture and the lack of voters getting involved and staying involved beyond the vote. So showing up is the one crisis we have. Staying involved afterwards, forming part of your ward committee, whether you're in a political party or not, is important. The ward committee becomes kind of a prefect, to use old school terms, but somebody who then becomes a bridge between the community, the councillor, and the council itself. And we just don't have enough people doing that, but people don't stay engaged to say, I need to know who my council is, what they're doing, and we need some kind of relationship that says, if you are not accountable to me, if you fail me, what is the consequence you are willing to accept?
So that ward committee would serve as a direct constituency type of relationship with whoever is sitting in council.
Absolutely, and one that manages and helps manage various constituencies in that ward. But ultimately, the system is created in such a way that the ward councillor, at minimum, should have some sort of relationship with that community. And it's not about whether there's a legal instrument. And I think it's important, that's the third part of it, that we do consider what are the legal instruments for coalitions, for, you know, being able to remove a ward councillor. But first, is that ward councillor willing to have a relationship with a community of accountability?
Okay, we've been joined by Tessa Dooms, and he's the founder of the Institute of Election Management Services, and he's joining us now. Terry, good afternoon. You're joining us as we begin this discussion with Tessa Dooms, who's in studio with me. In your view, as we get you to express your sentiments around coalition governments, how can they be taken forward in a sustainable way? Because currently it looks like there's trouble in paradise.
Absolutely. Good afternoon to Dan and to Tess and to the viewers. I've been advocating for regulation of coalitions for quite some time. And I think increasingly everybody is beginning to realize that the only way that we can actually be able to deal with the coalitions is to create some kind of mechanism where the parties that enter into coalitions would be accountable to. I've always referred to the model that they use in Kenya, where the parties that enter into coalition deposit the agreements with the register of political parties. And, that office is the one that basically coordinates and manages the coalitions. I think it is clear that political parties themselves do not have the capacity to manage the coalitions on their own, and therefore they require some kind of intervention from outside.
You think coalitions offer us hope for the future, knowing what we are seeing currently, Terry, in Ekurhuleni, Tshwane, Johannesburg, and Gqeberha?
No. It's not that it is not what they're offering us in terms of the future. They are a reality. In other words, once we have a proportional representation system, that proportional representation by its nature will lead to a situation where there is power sharing. And coalition, in this case, it's actually where political parties, especially in a situation where one political party does not have absolute majority, would then have to share power with another party that can enable it to be able to govern.
What should change to enable them to govern for the good of the residents, for the good of the ratepayers in a particular metro?
Let's take what was happening in Germany. You may be aware that Germany is also under coalition. In fact, Germany has been under coalition since almost the second World War. Now, in the last elections, what they did is that they established subcommittees. These subcommittees took almost 6 months to finalize arrangement and agreement in terms of key areas around which the political parties had to agree. They had to agree on the economy, the role of the central bank, the environment, and many other areas. So what do we require in South Africa? It's not a situation where you wake up the following day, then political parties have come together and they've agreed to form a coalition. Because those kind of coalitions are not based on principles. You need to agree on a program of action, and then that program of action, as I've indicated, needs to be deposited somewhere where it can actually be managed by a body outside the political party. So what we need, it's an arrangement similar to that where, you would have that, but it would mean that in order to make sure that there is no lacuna in the administration, that there is some kind of an arrangement where there is an agreement that during the first 6 months of a political party coming into power or after the elections, then the administration will be happening in a particular format without necessarily those political parties interfering with the administration, whatever level that administration.
Yeah, but Terry, I think maybe, I don't know if I'm naive, but that would require a certain level of political maturity. What do you think, Tessa?
Well, not only political maturity, it also requires an administration that is stable and depoliticized. One of the big problems we have right now is that our administrations change with every politician that comes in the door. So, I mean, the big conversations that have happened under the tables in the last few years with the city of Joburg has been, well, people are going to lose their jobs, and we had the 133 case where a lot of those were political appointees. And so you are trading and you're making decisions on the basis that the people who are actually in those offices are serving particular political interests. And that's a problem that we must solve for. But it's important that we take seriously this idea of more time. Right now in our system, coalitions are formed in 2 weeks. 2 weeks is just simply not enough time to come up with a serious negotiated settlement. And it's either that or coalitions need to be formed before the election.
And that
actually
settlement
happens.
should be focused on service.
Oh, it absolutely needs to be focused on service delivery, but it also needs to be built into it, and this is where the maturity comes in. Checks and balances and things that say, if we don't deliver, what happens to us? That's what political maturity looks like. it's not just about, whether or not people are willing to step aside in this instance or give up in that instance. It's really about accountability. Am I, as a politician, willing to be held to a standard that I can even set, and the community knows about, voters know about, the legislation knows about, and whoever, wherever that depository is, and I'm actually willing to say, if I do not deliver, these are the consequences.
Yeah, so the administration has to be stable, but that will be based on that agreement. That takes time to put together, not rush through it, and then you are able to say in the next term, which is 5-year term, we will be able to account for what we are delivering. Terry, is there room currently? I'm just thinking here, because we've got a proportional system of proportional representation currently. Is there room here for a change? Tessa, before you joined us, was talking about direct responsibility, that the model, there's nothing wrong with the model, but it's how it's being implemented so that a resident of a particular town can hold a ward councillor directly accountable for lack of delivery.
Of course, that is possible, especially if you also create a mechanism where the wards and ward councillors are actually empowered to be able to play a meaningful role within the society. We do have some kind of, at least at the legal level, a process where at the local level, ward councillors are supposed to be accountable to the constituencies that they've elected them. But invariably, you find that the ward councillors are actually accountable to political parties whose ticket they use to get into office. So it defeats the purpose as a result of that. But the legislation must be structured in such a manner that ward councillors are insulated from political parties, even if they got into power using a ticket of a political party, because they are not supposed to be accountable to the political party. They should be accountable to constituency. So I do agree with Tess in that regard. And then if you remember well, the new electoral system as well, which requires the establishment of constituencies, is supposed to be assisting in terms of ensuring that people who get into parliament, as well as the provincial legislature, are accountable to constituencies that put them there and not the political parties.
Yeah, the whole issue of doing work in the public service is really about serving the community. But when you look at what's happening currently, this is just watching Johannesburg. I don't know who's going to be in the new executive council, but Tapelo Ahmad from Al Jama, he's one councillor from that party sitting there. And then, of course, he's been put into power by the other parties, none of whom have a clear majority. That means there's going to be a struggle here in serving the people of Johannesburg.
Well, there's certainly going to be interesting dynamics at play. The first is that whoever ends up in that executive, we don't know that they're going to be put there because they have particular skills or particular ways of thinking or particular policy ideas for those different portfolios. So, I mean, the PA is a great example of jumping from one portfolio to another.
Patriotic Alliance.
Patriotic Alliance, in terms of what they want based on what they can bargain for today. So the same person that they put forward for transport the last time is the same person they put forward for economic transformation this time, because it's not based on what the councillor brings to the table, what that executive role brings, what the party wants to accomplish. It's based on what kind of power the party can have and how it can use that to leverage more power. And particularly right now, local governments are being used as leverage for 2024. People are either trying to show their muscle or gain access to the fiscus in order to help their chances in 24. And that is unconscionable and something that we must find mechanisms of combating.
Yeah. Ahead of next year, Terry, I'm just wondering here from an election perspective. I mean, there was an amendment. The bill was recently amended, and we're having independence now. After that constitutional court ruling, we've got the independent candidates now who are going to be participating. From a coalition politics, you said they are a reality. We can't run away from them. Off air, I was talking to Tessa. She said they're not a silver bullet. What lessons should we be taking, both as an electorate and political parties, in terms of making sure that if we emerge with a national coalition government, we don't commit the same mistakes?
I think the current environment also is creating a platform for the for electorate to begin to understand how coalitions operate. Some of the people say that once a party has actually been elected in a particular with a particular manifesto, then it enters into arrangement with another party that they find that to be undemocratic. So it shows that it is going to be important that we also educate the electorate about the new environment that we find ourselves in terms of how the coalition arrangement operates, because it does not mean that the fact that you have elected a political party with a particular manifesto, that manifesto is likely to be implemented in total. There's got to be a give and take. It's a process of compromise, and the political parties have got to do that in the interest of the constituencies that they're representing. If it comes to local government elections, really the issues are very simple. It's about basic services at the local level, and I don't think political parties should really be having major differences in terms of the delivery of those kind of services. I'm well aware, of course, that some of them have got political implications. Some of the decisions they have got political implications. But at the same time, I don't think issues are insurmountable to the effect, to the level where political parties cannot actually agree on the basic program of addressing those basic services.
Yeah, the other core should be the residents here. A parting thought, Tessa, what else could we be learning from this ahead of 2024?
Coalitions teach us a few things. One is that every vote matters, and that even a small party with very few votes can have a lot of power.
You can have one seat and be
Absolutely.
a mayor.
And so we must never think that small parties don't matter, because they absolutely do. And the second thing is that negotiation requires all of us, not just the parties. The entire society needs to get involved in what it is we need and how it is we're going to get it.
Thank you very much, Tessa Dooms, and as well to Terry Tsilane, founder of the Institute of Election Management Services. Tessa Dooms is an independent governance expert. We're just looking into the whole situation of how can multi-party coalition governments in our country work for the good, for the benefit of residents, the ratepayers, the electorate who vote them in.